Well, we're talking about agriculture right now. There's been wide conversation on food sufficiency. Nigeria spent a humongous amount of money importing food, even though sometimes the president says he's yet to be convinced because ordinary people eat local food. So he wonders how come we're spending so much money importing food. But the CBN has been talking about how Nigeria needs to be food sufficient. And part of what the president went to do in Lagos yesterday, commissioning a fertilizer plant, also was along that direction, because part of what we also import are the inputs into agriculture, and they're hoping that that to help reduce how much money, or if not totally eradicate that, and also ensure that we earn forex from food imports. We have with us a number of guests this morning to help shed light in terms of how to go about becoming food sufficient, considering what is currently going on between between Russia and Ukraine, and how a number of our food imports, staples as a matter of fact, are currently being threatened. Russia, as we know, is world #1 in the export of wheat, and Nigeria, imports a lot of wheat for its bread, and in some instances, we also import corn. The price of corn has been shooting through the roof because we do not have enough here, and we have to import to make up, and that has had also quite a number of shocks on our poultry sector, with eggs getting almost out of the reach of the common man. Well, there'll be answers to all of that today. We have with us this morning Dr. Onalo Akpa, who is the Director General, Poultry Association of Nigeria. Doctor, you're welcome to Sunrise Edit this morning. Good morning.
Thank you.
We also have with us Dr. Shuaibu Adamu, who is an agronomist, a crop specialist, and head of agriculture, Abuja Municipal Area Council. Dr. Adamu, you're welcome to Sunrise Edit this morning.
Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Professor Ken Ife is also with us. He's a development economist joining us via Zoom. Prof, it's good to see you. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, let me start with you, Dr. Akbar, and I'm particularly particular about this one because it is mind-boggling the rate at which we've seen the price of eggs. Let's not even talk about the chickens. The price of eggs skyrocket in the last couple of months. I mean, this increase, close to maybe 80%, in some instances 100% increase, has come within a span of less than 2 months, if my memory serves me well. Because it would seem every time I go to buy eggs in the shops, every time there's been an increment. What exactly is going on?
Thank you so much, my sister. You know, it is not only in the last 2-3 months, according to your memory. It has been lingering in the last 1.5 years. But the high prices of egg, according to people, and according to all of us, because we all go to the market, has been on the high roof, more especially in the last 5-6 months. And the reason is not far-fetched. The reason is as a result of cost of production. You said it, and let me put it correctly, that so many of the agricultural products are being imported. But I want to say that in the last few years, we've never had corn imported into this country. Although we're being challenged by the shortage in production as a result of the COVID outbreak, as a result of the insecurity. But with the Anchor Borrowers Program, a lot of effort has been put in place. And to the best of my knowledge, there had never been maize import into this country in the last 5-6 years. So we are contending with the local production from our farms, especially buffered by the Anchor Borrowers Program. And generally, the price of maize has never been friendly. It is not only maize. The prices of commodity has never been very friendly. And if the prices of commodity have never been very friendly, and you have almost 80% of your cost of producing egg and chicken meat from two principal commodities of maize and soybean, then invariably your cost of production via finally the final poultry products of egg and chicken will also be high, and that is what is generally responsible. I'll give you an instance. In the last 1 year, the price of maize has risen per ton from 85,000 naira metric ton, invariably translating into 8,500 naira per 100 kilogram bag, to as much as 200 to 250,000 naira per bag. We were able to have a little succor by the release of grains from the central bank maize system, and that price has been hovering when you add transportation, and that has been able to stabilize the price of maize delivered to your farm at 220, 230, depending on where you are located. Now, that is maize.
Let me get this straight. You're saying that the price of maize went from 85,000 naira
in the last 1 year,
which translates to 8,500 naira per bag,
per 100 kilogram
kg bag,
yeah.
yes, to what per 100 kilogram bag?
To 220, even it came down to 220, but it went as much as in the last 7-8 months, it went as much as 250,000 per metric ton, which translates to 25,000 naira per 100 kilogram bag.
Okay.
Now,
that's almost 200% increase.
Yes, but because of the intervention of the central bank anchor borrowers program, you know, those who are on the field producing maize, you know, the final maize is being taken by the central bank, it's being aggregated by the central bank, and then the central bank releases it to the critical sectors, to the general public, to a critical sector like the poultry industry. And what they do that is to give some quantity of this maize directly to some of our feed millers, to some of the big producers, and to the association, so that we can also distribute this maize to the small and medium scale producers. And that has been able to stabilize the price, you know.
Do we know why maize has gone up like this? Do we understand why?
Yeah, there are so many factors. We had the COVID lockdown, which affected our production. We had the general insecurity across the length and breadth of this country, which affected people going to the farm. So it's just a matter of supply and demand. The poultry industry in Nigeria has expanded in the last 10 years exponentially to an extent that over 4.5 million metric tons of maize is needed by the poultry industry alone in 12 months. So if you take a chunk of 4.5 million metric tons of maize into the poultry, then you talk of the general food security of the nations. I'll give you an example. In the 19 states of the Federation, the basic staple food of an average non-tanner is masara. If it is masara,
corn.
Yeah, if it is corn.
Yeah.
Now, if it is corn, you can see the pressure on corn. Then industrial use. Then the second thing is that whatever is being produced in this country nationally is also being offtaken by our neighboring countries that are landlocked. You see Niger, invariably they come to the Kano market to offtake their maize. Some certain parts of Chad come to Nigeria, except now because of insecurity. If it is to my good knowledge, when I was in the Northeast practicing, you discover that Nigerian food products goes as much as to Central Africa. So that also put a lot of pressure. And because of the weakening of the Naira, you discover that when these people have little quantity of money, they come into this place, they change it, you know, they buy a lot of things. So this has put a lot of pressure on maize. And the second thing, in formulating your feed, 80% of your cost of production in producing chicken, which is the meat and the egg, is purely two principal commodities, maize and soya. Now, today, the Nigerian poultry industry alone need almost 1.2 million metric tons of soya on an annual basis to provide the plant protein need of the poultry industry. Our annual soya bean production is not up to 1 million. So what it means is that from the point of production and harvest, Nigeria is already deficient in soya.
So do we import soybean?
Well, we've never imported soya bean, but what we try to do is that because we don't use full fat soya, especially except those who go into broiler meat production, and because of the high cost of using full fat soya, a lot of people use the residue which is the cake. So it is the cake we use. And what we are trying to tell people is that soya moved from 118,000 per ton to today 410,000 naira per metric ton. The milk, which is the byproduct of oil extraction, which we use in the poultry industry, as of today was going as much as 395,000 naira per metric ton. And you need almost 30% of it to include in 1 ton of feed.
You know, some people will say that this is supposed to be good news because if the prices of commodities are going up, what it should do is that it should encourage more and more people to get into farming, to see how it is that they can not just bring down the cost of this product, but also to benefit from this. Because what it means is that there is a high demand and we're not able to meet up. From your own experience, what would you say are the challenges preventing more Nigerians from getting into farming? Is it a lack of knowledge, or is it a lack of capital, or what exactly are the challenges?
Thank you very much. What you have just enumerated, they're all there. They're all intrigues of activities. In farming now, and he has told you, the weakening of the naira has actually aggravated the price of even the input the farmers are using on the farm. Today, when you want to expand your farm, or rather, if you want to, in increasing even the yield, we have what we call vertical increase or horizontal increase. If we have to increase food production in Nigeria, we have to go the 2 ways, the vertical and the horizontal. But we have problems. If you want to expand your farm now, you cannot do manual, which the farmers were using. You have to go mechanized or using tractorization or the animal power. When you go to all those kind of a thing, the prices of using those sources of farming activities has gone high. Like tractor now, if you want to buy a set of tractor, like the John Deere, it used to be less than 10 million, but now it's getting to 80 million with some people. And the farmer who they might have cultivated his farm hiring for maybe say 4,000 per hectare, now for 10, 15,000, you can't get it. The price of diesel has gone up. The price of the tractor itself has gone up. And how would they do that work for you at a very cheap rate? So we are looking at the farmer, as the price of the food is increasing, it is a result of the input in the production that's also increasing. The price of herbicide now has gone up very seriously. And we cannot continue using the manual because that will bring a lot of drudgery in the agricultural industry. And we want to bring the youth now into agriculture. So we have to remove all those drudgery. So in bringing them, you need a lot of money. And when you go to look for credit facilities now, it's another horrible thing. Sometimes you will start in December. Before you get it, it's already August. What do? The rainy season is gone. Even the Anko Brewers program, very, very beautiful. However, in the implementation, because it is public-private, the private sector who will uptake these people are in control. And when they are bringing this input, sometimes the prices are it's another thing. So when the farmer aggregates all this, because when you say you farmed and you want to make profits, you have to look from the scratch, from the land clearing down to the bagging and storage. How much have you spent? And if you want to make farming as a business, you have to bring at least the cost of your production must be taken into account. So when you do that, for sure, the food price must go up. And again, as he talked also, it's about demand and supply. Yes. Now with the current physical insecurity that we're having, people are even afraid to go to the farm. Like in the north, where chunk of maize is produced as indicated, you know what is happening over there. People even pay the bandits to go to farm. And sometimes, in some cases, you hear that even after paying them, they don't even allow you to go. So you see that there must be food shortage. And actually, we have been producing like the maize, more than we can consume in this country. In their own poultry industry, when we want to produce maize, I know I was involved in the AflaSafe program. Because when you want to formulate your feed, it must be clean, clean out of aflatoxin. Otherwise, you're already introducing disease in your animals, and they will not grow. Then he knows the implication as a poultry man. So we have integrated the use of AflaSafe. And when you are bringing AflaSafe, I was involved in the pilots by the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, Ibadan. I was also one of the person in charge of FCT in the implementation. It was sold then at subsidized to some extent, but now, when the private sector is taking, it's additional cost to even the main production. So that if you want to produce safe maize for the poultry industry, in this situation, it must be aflatoxin free. And you are increasing that to your production. So that must be the price of corn will have to go. And he has said, yes, one of our problems in agriculture is we are feeding the West African countries. Most of our food are being smuggled.
Are they being smuggled or they are being bought? Are they allowed to come into the market and buy, aren't they?
Well, go to the border, you see what is happening. We know when you say smuggling, they're even taken without following the due process.
Okay. I think what he means by smuggling is that, you see, anything that is outside formal trade
is smuggling.
The moment it becomes an informal trade, it is never documented. There is no gain onto that trade. Because if it is formal, then you could now say, fine, I could earn some foreign exchange.
Yes.
Then you could count some from the benefit of hindsight, or are the pluses and the minuses. But this is completely informal. And if it is completely informal, then it is not to your advantage.
No, it's smuggling.
Is it to the advantage of the farmer, though?
As a farmer, yes, it's to our advantage. Because, like you say, that most of at least almost all the countries surrounding us, their currency is higher than our own now. And that's the advantage they're even taking. So the maize that a farmer will sell in Nigeria, and he takes it to Nigeria, their currency is higher than ours. So you make more money.
Doesn't even take it. They come to buy.
They come to buy and go. So some people are involved. And then, as he said, it is not in the formal this thing. It is being smuggled. And you can see that even the state is not gaining. Because if you go through formal, you have to pay some tax. So, but it is actually to the advantage of the farmer. Because, like before, I, as a professional, I'm involved in the farming too. I sell farm produce. The prices we were selling in the past, as you were saying, yes, the maize price has gone up. And even see farmers now, during off-season, the price will skyrocket more. There are so many who have maize now in their store. They're waiting for the price to increase. I think it's about, is it 200,000 per ton now around the local market? You see at 20,000 per bag. So, and before June, I think
it's going to come at the peak. By May, June.
By May, June, it's going to appear. And so many farmers are waiting. So it's at the advantage.
So there's also hoarding.
Yeah, they hold it. There are some people.
Call it business.
It's business now. So all those things are, creating problems. But the major thing is, one is, if there's a way that the cost of production could come down, that will also bring about reducing the price. And on the other way, if the government can go and buy this produce from the farmers at higher price, and then sell it as highly subsidized, that's another thing. And sometimes you cannot stop the farmers selling at their will price because they are not getting the input at subsidized. So if you are not giving me input at subsidized, you cannot control what I'm going to sell. So to some extent, the government is trying, but it's not getting very well to the farmers.
Well, Professor Kenny Faye is a development economist, and I'm sure that he must be aware of some of these challenges. Prof, have you been able to aggregate what the challenges are to be able to come up with solutions to some of our very complex problems with regards to agriculture?
Reasons we are dragging our feet as a country to sign European Partnership Agreement was because of the reluctance, not just the impact it would have on our manufacturing sector and our value addition, but the fact that EU didn't want to put subsidy on the table. They're subsidizing agriculture in the European Union. The moment you talk about anything after subsidy, all the French farmers will be on the streets. So it baffles me that we are happy to fund 3 trillion on consumption of petrol rather than put even 1 trillion to the subsidy of the production of food. Particularly this value chains we are talking about. You don't subsidize consumption, you subsidize production to keep jobs at home. So that's a paradox. Then the second one is that we have devaluation in our economy. I mean, I'm from ECOWAS Commission. You know, over the last few years, 5 years, 6 years, 1 naira was buying 3 francs CFA. Now, you'll be lucky if you get 1 franc CFA for 1 naira. So that is the impact of devaluation. And then when you remember that we are surrounded by Francophone countries, Nigeria is actually feeding 300 million people, not 200 million people. If you look at the northern Cameroon, Chad, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and then the northern is Benin, and Togo as well. We are feeding these people that are upstream because they have more adverse weather and name it. But also the demand factor that their currency is far stronger than our own. So our food appears extremely cheap to them. So they don't even need to worry themselves growing anything anymore because they can do good business buying our things and using them themselves because it's 60% devalued based on what they are. So also, the traditional challenge we've been having with those surrounding neighboring countries is that they just come and buy our food when it's cheap at harvest season, as you just mentioned, 100,000 naira a kilo at the ton, at the harvest, not at the point of harvest. And because we have issues about storage facility, issues about power for drying the crops, and they carry them away. They dry them, they bring them back. God knows how they dry them. After their temperature is higher, they can put it out on the street or not. But they bring them back during farming season to sell them at almost double the price. So that's good business for them. Now aided by devaluation of the currency. So you can see that. But of course, the third one is that they are all members of ECOWAS. And under ECOWAS Treaty, we have free movement of foods. Primary foods are moved freely in the region, no tax, no duty, and there's nothing we can do about that. We're not going to sign off from ECOWAS. And then we're now going into continental free trade. Now, anybody in Africa can actually come and carry our food, raw food. But when you add value, which is what the critical thing, when you do value addition, then they will have to pay tax to move the food across the border. If they don't want to pay tax, they have to register for ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, ETLS. But then they must meet the rule of origin, that at least there is 30% value addition. So under that, they can now be registered and they can move their goods duty-free. So at least we can get some dollar there if they have to pay tax. But it's not the case. Now that brings us to the third tangential issue, which is when Ban Ki-moon, before he just left office, he said that the world will need 30% more food by the year 2030. But the climate section of the UN told him that, look, the world will produce 30% less food by 2030 because of climate change factors. And you can see those climate change factors coming down to us from the northern frontiers of our neighboring states. So you can see the drift, and it's even seen how it ends up with animal clash between the herd and other. It's all part of the drift downwards to the sea. Now, so the issue here is that Nigeria will be 300 million people by 2030. At the moment, the population drift will move from 50% in the urban area to 75% in the rural area, on the rural to urban, 50 to 75%, because the urbanization rate is 4.6%, Population growth rate is 3%. So, and then the young people, the average age of the farmer, is about 65 years. So the issue is this: 70% of our population will be in the urban area. And who's going to grow the food? All the young people are moving. They're all moving, following infrastructure. You can't convince them to stay in the rural area where there's no light, their power, they're having issue with their connection. So, we have to deal with it. And then you now compound this with the asymmetric warfare going on in all these geopolitical zones. So, meaning that there's a shrinkage of our agroecological footprint. And that's why the intervention of the central bank was so critical, because people would, I keep saying it, more people would have died of starvation in our country than COVID and all the warfare put together, but for the intervention of this Anko-Borrowers program. So what Anko-Borrowers program has done, which is good news for us, is that...
Let's take a break at this point. We will come back and take a more critical look at the Anko-Borrowers program, the areas it has intervened, and what level of success it has recorded, and if it can be replicated in other areas of the economy. In just a moment, please stay with us. We're still talking about the agro-economy and how to ensure that Nigeria is self-sufficient when it comes to primary foods which it consumes. We have a panel of guests here, very seasoned in their fields. I'm going to be throwing this conversation over now to Lagos for questions from my colleagues. Gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mark. You talked about the Anko-Borrowers program, which we'll come to in a moment. But I'd like to quickly take Professor Kenife up on this one because it's quite important. So we're talking about having agriculture contribute more to the economy. Currently, it's doing about 25% of the GDP, contributing about 25%. That's more than I think industries, but half what we have with services. But if you take it backwards, the crate of egg about 2 years ago was between 800 and 1,000. Now you get it for 2,000, 2,500. So it's more expensive to afford food. I mean, to pay for these goods and all that in the agricultural sector. So how can we get agriculture to contribute more to the economy when people can hardly even afford, I mean, the basics like egg, bread, and all of that? So really, is that whole chain defective, sort of?
Well, I don't think it is, but I think we need to do more, and we have to be far more rational in the way we apply our resources. You cannot convince me. I'm telling you, you can't convince me why the nation will be spending 3 trillion naira subsidizing a product that is being consumed by people other than Nigerians. Why the capacity to produce food, which is far more essential to our existence, is completely ignored. And then I can't understand that. Why can't you take one of those 3 billion and put it in agriculture? You create more employment, use it to subsidize agriculture. You subsidize production, you don't subsidize consumption. Full period. You want to subsidize consumption, you're subsidizing somebody else who are abroad, paying for the jobs. So we're going to get to terms with that. But there is something else connected to this. We also need to begin to look, because 80% of the feed, 80% of the cost of producing chicken, of course, is feed. 70% or more of producing fish is also feed. And the prices are going up. So it has a knock-on effect on the price of the product. Why don't we start looking at some substitute products? I know in Cameroon, for a very long time now, they are using the stem, the banana stem, and then the plantain stem. They are heavy and they are wasteful. You don't do anything. You just take the banana and cut that huge 80 kilogram tons, put it down. Now, what they do is that they dry that, they cut them, they dry them, they pulverize them, and they use them to substitute 33% of the maize, carbohydrate. So that is a huge savings, and they're using that. And we should start doing that, because whatever you can do to bring, even spent grains use barley, used in brewing, and some of the other there are spent grains that we can bring and then grind them and use them to reduce granite has issues, but the cake and was longer because they are very prone to toxins, mycotoxins, including of course aflatoxins. But there are many substitutes that we can begin to look at now and use them to augment the protein and the carbohydrate content of the feed.
So essentially,
So
Prof, you're saying, just before I take this subject, essentially you're saying that we can actually cut down the price currently if we look into those alternatives and subsidizing production.
Check Cameroon, they are using a lot of those, you know what I mean by the banana? You see that huge trunk, you cut off the banana, what happens? So like they cut them, break them into pieces, dry them, then grind them, and then use them to supplement carbohydrate, but not 100% of the carbohydrate, but at least 33 to 35% of the carbohydrate is cut down by using those. And then also you have other spent grains I have mentioned.
Okay. So let's take this to...
don't do anything with the spent grains. And there are many grains that we can use to substitute for the protein. So we should be looking at some of those, as as intensifying and bring subsidy into this whole thing. It is not fair.
Prof, let's do this. Pardon me, let's take this to Dr. Akpa in Abuja, because you have touched on very important points. And I'd like to see how this or these points are being taken on board. So, Dr. Akpa, so he's talked about first on the government side, trying to subsidize production. And we're focusing on the poultry subsector because, I mean, you represent that subsector, and it's important to see how that works within your sector. So subsidizing and also finding alternatives. By the way, we're talking about maize imports. I mean, in 5 years, you said that you don't think that there have been imports, but I don't think that's entirely true, because I recall the governor of the CBN saying, well, he will do all he can to stop the current imports that we're having. I recall that there were waivers granted at some point to, I think, 4 companies to import when we had issues with production. In fact, the USDA puts our import, as at last time, at about 300,000 tons or thereabouts. So clearly, these things are there, but perhaps you don't engage in it. But let's go back to the point Professor Ife was making about getting government to subsidize and you looking for alternatives. How has it been trying to get alternatives so people can at least afford the products and boost, the agriculture subsector to add more to the nation's GDP?
Yeah, thank you, my brother. I just want to reflect my memory back. You know, when you said the high cost of production of egg and chicken has been mostly because of the import of grains into this country. That is why I said in the last 5-6 months, there have never been major import of maize into this country. Yes. Just barely 2 years back, I think I was on a program here, and when we had the highest price rise in maize, the Central Bank of Nigeria granted 4 companies to bring in 262 or 282,000 metric tons of maize. Now, in a situation where you have 4.5 million metric tons annual maize requirement, 265 or 285,000 metric tons or thereabout, to me is negligible. I wouldn't call it import, because it was just an intervention, just like the CBN is doing through the Anchor Borrowers program. So to me, I don't call that direct importation that has impacted on the prices of egg and chicken the way we are talking right away. Like Professor Ike said, you see, it is not only in Cameroon. At the moment, Nigerian poultry industry is able to stay afloat because of using other alternative source of raw material. For example, cassava peels being developed and refined by the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture is actually being used by most of our feed millers as part of the energy requirement of producing poultry feed. If they were depending 100% on using maize as energy supply for the poultry feeds completely, the prices of final poultry feeds like we are having today wouldn't have been able to be even affordable by any poultry farmer. So almost 20 to 30% of cassava peel is being used by most of our feed millers. Now, the second thing is that there is what we call feed-grade wheat. The feed-grade wheat is not the normal wheat that is being used for flour milling. It is wheat that is being used as an alternative to maize. So most of our farmers also use what we call feed-grade wheat. And by the time you add 30% feed-grade wheat, you use 20% cassava peel, then you discover that the prices of feed comes down invariably. And that is what has been able to keep the poultry industry afloat up to this moment. So it is not peculiar to Cameroon or other people. You know, in situations where every person is trying to reduce cost of production and to be able to produce for Nigerians to afford the final poultry products, people are using all kinds of, and that is why our feed nutrition experts basically every day are on research and development. And then the moment they discover one alternative ingredients, they shift to using it. But you can't use it 100%. And that is why today, the poultry industry is still afloat. If we were depending on maize as a complete source of energy, 100%, today, no poultry feed, no farmer will be able to afford poultry feed. And I also want to add, other than maize and soya, you discover that the price of offal, wheat offal, which used to be 2,500 naira per 100 kilogram bag, as of last week, the price of one bag of offal of 100 kilo is as much as 9,000 naira. Now, because of also the devaluation of the naira, you discover that the 10 to 15% micro ingredients, the toxin binders, the lysine, the methionine, the enzymes, the other components that are imported are also exerting high pressure. And there is no way you can have alternative for most of these things. Amino acids, you can hardly have alternative locally. So these are what is impacting. But just to buttress what Professor Ike has said, we are actually devising means, and a lot of our practitioners, the feed millers especially, and our nutritionists are always on research, and then they're coming up with a lot of alternative ingredients to having poultry feeds. And we are actually doing it. It is only we are hammering on the basic ones.
Yeah,
yes,
it seems that one can't even wait for those alternatives, because I remember an African proverb that says, before the corn came, chickens fed on something, but maybe not for commercial purpose. Let me ask Mr. Adamu this question, especially because he is operating at a local government level. Mr. Adamu, there is part of the value chain in agriculture that I remember back in time, something that they call extension services. I mean, in the entire, space, crop farming, plant, and all those things, it would seem like there are certain aspects of the entire value chain that we have compromised over the years. And many people, when they even hear it these days, it sounds like gibberish to them. For instance, this extension services thing that we know seem to have been compromised over the years. And it's like a drill down effect of agriculture to the local government level. How severely is that sector compromised? And in your opinion, if we are going to look at food production, food security sustainably, what do we need to do urgently, especially from the local government level?
Thank you very much. Actually, yes, that's what we have said. Local government plays complementary role in the extension service, because in the design, the ADPs, Agricultural Development Projects, handles extension services. And at the same time, the Department of Agriculture in the local government, they also do that. When you look at even the systems of the local government in some of the states, you will see that there are so many things that you can just say there are nothing to write home about, even the funding at the local government. But specifically, where I come from, in Abuja, the local government, we call them the area councils, are working. Like where I head the Agri department in the Abuja Municipal Area Council, we do a lot of work together with the farmers. Like all we have in Abuja Municipal Area Council, we have 62 wards. And in every ward, we have the leaders of the farmers. And we have posted so many extension staff in all the wards, and they're working collectively with the farmers. And this is creating a lot of impact, and that is also helping in producing food, especially with the teeming population that is coming every day to the Abuja area, to FCT. And that is what has been stemming some of the food production in FCT.
Okay.
And
one can only expect
the ADPs.
Yes, one can only expect that this can be cascaded all over the nation because I can just imagine I can just imagine the ripple effect that will have on our food production. Professor Ike, we seem to have a major distraction or gap in a number of areas in our lives. This next question is for Professor Kenife. In Nigeria, we produce just about 10% of the honey that we consume in this country. The rest of it are imported. I also recall that the Minister of Agriculture at some point had said that the livestock value chain in Nigeria is worth 30 trillion naira. We have a huge potential, yet we have all of these challenges bedeviling the progress that we need to make. What, in your opinion, is the issue as an economist now? And drilling this down, especially to the local government areas, as I've asked Mr. Adamu. This question is for Professor Kenife.
Well, I'm glad you started with honey. Brazil decided to be the #2 biggest production of honey in the world. They commissioned a professor. The professor went around the world looking for the bee queen that will give them the productivity that they want. And he ended up coming to Nigeria. He actually went to Nsukka. And they came out with the African queen. That African queen was what they saw, and it was producing 3 times more than the European bees and the American varieties and South American varieties. But the only challenge it has is that when they sting, they kill you. So the stinging power of the bee is the one that is deadly. So they now started crossing it with other bees from other continents to see if they can temper the ability to kill, the ferocity. So that's what they were trying and crossing. But they found out that wherever they cross, whatever they cross, with our own still has the highest productivity, and they cannot stop that aggression. That aggression was still dominant. It's like if a white woman marries a black man, the child will still be looking black hair. If a black man marries a white, so in the same way, wherever you go, we'll still have this genetic superiority. So but now they are now getting the highest yield in it. So it is the same thing like palm oil. The Malaysians came here and collected the tenara, and they are now doing more than 20 times more than we do. We're no longer even in the map. We used to be 60%. So the thing is this: we are the base. We have what it takes. But what we have not done is what has now been done, using a program that structures the participation of to actually bring commercialization in the way we produce. Because don't forget, America, only 4% of the population is involved in agriculture, and they can feed the world. Whereas here, we are struggling with 60% of population which are involved in agriculture, struggling to feed ourselves. So what the Anchor Borough has did, which people haven't even been talking about, is that it has transformed the subsistence agriculture system we know it from commercial farming. And it has also destroyed the myth that you can only be a commercial farmer when you own 5,000 hectares or whatever, and then you employ. No, you can be 1 man, 1 hectare, and be in a chain where you are using standardized feed, controlled input, mechanized agriculture, and then you produce in the same way as 1 man that has 50,000 hectares is producing. And even better, because you are creating 50,000 jobs. If you have 50,000 farmers with 1 man, 1 hectare, and for goodness sake, 4.8 million people in the first time in our life here have got loan without collateral, and then done 5.2 million. So what will have happened is that we have created that window, and then the aggregation of the produce by a central bank and now going to release it is a mechanism to contain the flying away of our produce to the northern parts of the Africa. That is our northern frontiers. So what we should say to government is we need a fiscal. I'm not saying to monetary, because don't forget the monies are borrowed. You can't tell federal bank to subsidize because it's borrowed money. The fiscal money has to come in to subsidize that thing CBN is about to release to the mailer who will mail and produce the feed. That is the point where, because we now have an edge, we have an entry into this equation. Now let the fiscal incentive come, put some of that subsidy to say to CBN, okay, please, let's give you 500 million, reduce this price, and then give it to your people who are going to mail and produce the food. for the feed. So in that way, we are not going to focus on policies that will never get you anywhere in trying to contain what is going on of the flight of our produce up north. Because these people have currency advantage, they need it so much. And if you say, okay, rather than sell in Kano, bring it down to Lagos, look at the transportation costs. 1 ton, to transport 1 ton from Kano to Lagos or Port Harcourt costs 100,000 naira. And I'm sure it would have gone up now with petrol. So you can't compete. This Kano is so close to them. Those northern frontiers are so close to them, and they have advantage because your food is so cheap to them. So they'll buy them. So you can't stop them. And why would you stop when you are part of a treaty? And you don't have to close border. So the whole thing is that the window now is that we have a system, ABP system, and global laws, expand it to all the states, increase the products that are under the program, and then because you get back those that belongs to you for repayment of the money, subsidize that point so that you can enter into the system, control who processes it, and make sure it delivers to our people. So that's the angle that I have seen, where you can get it down. We need to subsidize agriculture. Let's stop playing games. If you don't subsidize agriculture, you will live to tell this story another day.
Prof, it's a fine place to leave this conversation for today because we're totally out of time. I'm trying to see how we can lobby our producers to see if we can have this same panel back tomorrow, because there is so much to unpack in the agricultural sector, and so much for Nigerians to learn about why the price of food seems to be out of reach of almost, I don't want to say the common man, because I don't know what the definition of the common man is anymore. But gentlemen, I have to thank you so much for coming on this morning. I hope that if our producers agree to that, you'll be willing to come again tomorrow, will you?
Yeah, because we've never been able to express what is to be done. Because especially for the poultry industry, if it continues like this, for a population of over 200 million people, still consuming low in terms of per capita, per caput, per person, chicken meat and egg, then we'll eventually, every person will close shop. And the moment we close shop, then that means the poultry industry will be taken up by cheap import, especially with the African Continental Trade Agreement.
Well, we have your commitment on that, so let me hold on to that and let us see what our producers will eventually decide. But we have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on this morning. We've been speaking with Dr. Onalo Akpa, who is the Director General Poultry Association of Nigeria, Dr. Shuaibu Adamu, who is an agronomist and crop specialist, and Professor Ken Ife, who joined us via Zoom, and he's a development economist.